Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's Moscow's Public Works and Finance Committee. Today is September the 12th. To my right, Walter Steed, Counselor. To my left, Catherine Bonzo, Counselor. I'm Art Betke, your host, and Supervisor Gary Riedner over there. First item on the agenda is the approval of the Public Works and Finance Committee minutes from August 22nd.
I'm good with them.
So was I.
And I am too, so those are approved. Next up is the Southeast Moscow Sewer District contract. Rod Hall, City Attorney.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
This next item has been a work in progress. The original contract between the City of Moscow and the Southeast Moscow Sewer District, the one that we were working from, was executed in 1991 and expired at the end of 2012. And since that time, we've been operating under extensions of that particular agreement. The reason why we redid the agreement was things have changed a little bit, and we'd met with the district, and they had some certain needs that the current contract, the old contract, wasn't addressing. And this council's aware of some of those issues. We've had a couple public workshops. And we got it down between the parties to an agreement on what we think will meet the city's as well as the district's needs. There were some changes from the original agreement to this current agreement. It dealt with, providing some revenue, or there originally was general facility service charges or fees wasn't keeping up with the rate of inflation. The city was getting more, but the district was actually getting less if they ever needed to do some infrastructure replacement. And then we also included in here to meet some of our administrative cost needs to raise the fees associated with administering the accounts from $1 to $2. And during the discussion, we found out that the district needed some revenue, and so we added another $1 there to cover some of their administrative costs. And I think that after several iterations of the agreement, the one that's before you has been, we met with district and their attorney, and they are agreeable to the contract that's now before you.
How did we wind up on the pass-through issue? And how much connection fee do city people who are on the pass-through pay versus how much are the actual Southeast Sewer District clientele paying?
Well, there are clauses within the contract that address pass-through flow, so flows that are originating outside of the district and passing through district facilities. The connection fee section prescribes that for those instances, each new business or new home that's constructed would pay the city's general facilities charge 100%, which would be retained by the city. And in addition to that, would pay a 70% of that same amount, which would be the district's portion for their connection fees. So essentially, it's 170% of the city's general facilities charge. 100% piece goes to the city, 70% piece goes to the district.
There was another concern was from the district. They were worried about if the city allows additional connections, would it get to the point where the system would be over capacity? Mm-hmm. So we've addressed that. The parties have a duty to communicate with each other, and when new hookups are allowed, the city will communicate with them. So we will have communications going back and forth. And it's a system that the city monitors anyway. So if it's going to get to a situation where it's going to meet its capacity, we will work together with the district to make the improvements that are needed.
Yeah, I noticed there was a clause in there, too, about notifying the district when somebody else hooks in so that everybody's records match up properly for billing and keeping track of who's accessing the services, things like that.
I have a question.
Yes,
mine had to do with I was vaguely remembering the period of time that this contract was going to last, and I couldn't remember.
Well, right now we have the term is 10 years with the renewal period for one 10-year term.
Okay. That's what I need to know.
Okay.
Other than that, I don't have any questions.
Walter.
Okay, I want to talk about impact on city residents. Currently, do the members that are in the district and in the city, which is Ridgeview 1, do they pay the surcharge, the $1 surcharge?
The folks that are currently within the city that are also district patrons do not pay the $1 surcharge.
Okay. And under the new contract, they would?
All district patrons would pay the district fees.
So Ridgeview's 20 or 24 houses will see an increase of $1 per account per month with this contract change?
What has been proposed is that the city would cover that $1 fee on an annual basis payment to the district, so that those residents within the city limits would not see a change in their rates.
And that's in the budget?
Excuse me?
And that's in the new budget?
I'm presuming. It's not that much money. It's 26 times 12.
Okay, and then the people in Ridgeview 2 that are in the district but not in the city, no, other way around, in the city but not in the district,
Correct.
their per month would be structured how?
City rate. Because they are a city customer only.
The difference being, if I may, that the ones in Ridgeview 1 are still within the district. They are district patrons. Those in proposed Ridgeview 2 will not be within the district. So the city essentially is covering, so that it covers all district residents, would be covering that surcharge for those city residents who are also district patrons.
Okay.
So
So
their
the
rate will
people
not
in
change.
Ridgeview 2 on a monthly basis would pay the city rate?
Yes.
Okay. And the district would receive nothing
Off
for
the
those,
monthly.
for those pass-through?
Right. What they would
Gallons.
receive is with the connections,
Okay,
would be the payment to them.
if I may. What's the current connection fee?
I may be able to tell you that.
And currently, right now, I think the district's only getting 350 of that.
No, what's the current city connection fee?
The current connection fee for a city customer for single-family residence for sewer is $2,130.
So Ridgeview 2 lot buyers and builders would pay 170% of that, if I heard you correctly.
That is correct.
So that, I don't have my calculator, about
altogether.
3,500?
Approximately.
And that 70% surcharge goes to the district.
Correct.
And that's a one-time payment to the district for those people to use the district's lines to get back to the city.
Correct.
Les, are there any other changes in the fee structure that impact city residents?
I think that's it.
Are those the only two?
I think that's it, yes.
Give me half a second if you don't.
No worries.
At one time, someone asked the question about when the district tells the city that they have insufficient capacity. It's paragraph 4 of some section, or of 4.4. And there's a 12-month time period before the district can say no more, it appears. That strikes me as too long.
Well, there's a couple
From
components.
when they become aware,
Sure.
we've got a problem, and you've got a new, what's Ridgeview 2, 60 lots?
Approximately.
You've got a new 60-lot subdivision announced that's out in the city, going to be in the city, outside the district. It's announced, it's being approved, the district becomes aware of it. Somehow or other, they figure, we can't take it. They give you notice. It's 12 months. As a developer, I'd take that as a challenge. I can get this built and get those people on before they can stop me.
Excuse me.
There's a couple of sections within the contract that address the capacity issue. One is that if there is a capacity issue seen, that the district and or the city will communicate about that, and then that the city would not allow any additional connections at that time that would increase surcharge into the system until the city took steps to remedy that situation, okay, which could take different forms. The 12-month period for new connections being permitted to go into the system, part of that is the land development process. As you know, it takes time to go through the platting. So we wanted to give sufficient time such that if somebody started down the path of platting property, they don't get 3/4 of the way through and then say, oh, guess what, you don't get to connect. So we wanted to avoid that situation by giving enough lead time for the district saying, hey, in 12 months we have to stop. But during that 12-month period, the city, anytime we were reviewing new applications, we consider whether or not the existing system has capacity. And then as far as maintenance and operations, we're looking at what is the flow that's occurring within the system. And if there are problems, then the contract says we will take actions to remedy those problems. So I think we've addressed it in several ways.
You don't think it's going to be a situation of somebody being able to force excess volume on the district without the district or the city being able to preclude it, as long as one side or the other is awake and paying attention to what the situation is?
I believe that's the case, yes. And, again, the existing system has quite a bit of capacity available within it.
I understand that, but you've still got clauses in here, when and if.
When and if, yes.
Okay. I think that's all I've got.
Cool. So, I'm good with it.
If
Get it signed
if the
and
district,
move it
if the
down.
district, I don't think the district's here. If the district's good with it, I'm okay with it.
I am too. Catherine?
Yeah, and I think they said they met with the attorney, so I guess anything that would have come up maybe through them possibly.
No idea.
So they seem amenable, so regular agenda?
Yeah.
Certainly can. Thank you.
Okay. Next up, the Picabo Tract A purchase agreement. Rod?
This next item relates to the well 10 and the 5 booster station judicial confirmation that happened in 2014. As part of that process, the city had planned to upgrade or build a new booster system on that part of the city. And there was this development going in the Picabo Estates, and they actually had a lot that would be a ideal fit for the city's needs. So the city entered in negotiations with the property owner to come up with a fair market or fair price for the value of the lot. The situation with this particular lot is up in that subdivision, it's going to be a smaller than a buildable lot because the city didn't need a full-size lot. And if the developer was going to develop the lot, he could have just moved the eastern lot line on that and make it bigger and would have a buildable lot and could have made a lot more money on. But we negotiated, what the city's needs were and took that into account and came up with the price with the developer. And I believe that the purchase price is going to be $64,000 for the lot, and it seems to meet the ideal needs for the city, and it'll benefit the residents of the city.
Yeah, my question is just, I went back to the January 6 notes for that from 2014, and so I just didn't know if the lot had been, the price had been negotiated back then, or if it was presently being negotiated.
It was just presently negotiated.
Okay.
Of the developer's planned sales price of his sellable lots,
That's the next question.
how does this price compare on a per square foot basis?
Well, if we would have moved the line over, no, $20, but I think if there's 70 to 80 high-end $80,000 lots.
Per square foot?
I do not have that.
Anyone?
Scott, Les, any clues?
That was the same
I'd
question
left
I
a
had, too.
message earlier today so I could ask that, and I didn't get a return call, so.
I don't know.
I'm just going to say at the top of my head, I mean, it looks comparable to what the other ones are, but I don't know the exact
Can you
value.
find out before council?
Certainly.
Please.
My question is, with that lot, does all of the sidewalk, street frontage paving come with it as part of the purchase price?
No, as part of the development agreement, I think that's coming before you later, I think that the developer is responsible for the street frontage, and it actually even goes up onto Orchard Street, so that'll be their responsibility.
It's being sold as a developed lot.
I believe so.
And
Does
relative
anybody know for sure?
Orchards, which one?
The one we're
Lot
buying.
Tract A.
Tract A,
Is being sold as a developed
We're
lot.
buying it as a developed
We're
lot.
buying it with public improvements installed.
that was the crux of my question. Thank you,
I knew
Walter.
that.
Yes. The other one has to do with phasing. Tract A is in Phase 2, but do we have to wait for Phase 2 to move in, or will the booster station be constructed before as part of,
That's a less question.
Yeah.
and here he comes.
The phasing component should not really affect our ability to move forward with the on-site lot improvements for the construction of the booster station. As part of the development of the subdivision, we've worked out with the developer what the water system improvements would need to be to accommodate the booster station itself. So that construction of that would be ongoing with what he's doing right now and all his utility work. That would then set us up to allow us to be able to construct the booster station next summer and then connect right into that water system that he will have completed. The phasing is, as much as anything, going to be the surface improvements. He still has to put in, at this time, in order to make the water system and everything work, put in the water out to Orchard, and then he won't necessarily have to address sewer and storm, but he definitely has to get the water in. So we would be able to proceed with our portion while he's then finishing his Phase 2, presumably next summer.
So not too much impingement on what we've got in mind for the
Does
booster.
not appear to
Well,
be the case.
The booster pumps, we need them for fire flow and continued service to the neighborhood, so I think it benefits the whole city, and so I'm in favor of the purchase.
Is this lot's in Phase 2?
It is.
I was looking at jumping forward to the development agreement. There's no restrictions in the development agreement that precludes us being able to, following up the same question, maybe the same exactly, but precludes us from being able to do what we want to do on that lot.
Do not believe so.
It talks in terms of building permits, and we don't have to have a building permit.
Well, we would have to deal with permits for our own facility as a public facility on that parcel.
We haven't written a restriction that's going to restrict us, have we? So I don't know, and I don't know that we have or haven't.
Right.
I hadn't
Right.
thought about the phasing until Art asked it, so.
That's something we could certainly look at just to be sure.
Yeah,
before
just
it
to
goes
make sure that
council.
we aren't
We don't want to write a rule and then turn around and break it ourselves, I don't
That's true.
think.
That's true.
Well, while we were on this, is it okay to ask you about Tract B? Because that's where the retention,
The
So, but
detention
we'll have
pond,
the
yeah.
Tract A phasing thing taken care of by the time we come back.
Right. We'll address that.
but B doesn't have anything to do with that.
No, B is the park and the detention pond. for
Detention
stormwater,
pond.
yes.
But that doesn't get that label at all, just booster station. That's cities.
The Tract A would be
Yeah.
the city piece, and the Tract B would be a city piece also,
Uh-huh.
but it's dedicated for those two purposes.
Walter.
Les, it's paragraph 11 of the development agreement. It says, "No building permit shall be issued for any phase of this development until after all public improvements related to each preceding phase of this development are completed, installed, and accepted by the city."
Right,
So
that's
you just need
pretty
to-
standard language, so we'll take a
Just
take
make
a
sure
look at
you
that.
don't
We aren't walking on our own.
Yeah.
build a
yourself in the
trap and then,
corner, right.
build a trap and then jump in it.
Right, exactly.
So, okay, well, this sounds like with the remnant homework, this will go on regular just because we have a couple questions hanging fire for more research.
We anticipated that we would bring the Picabo Estates bundle to regular agenda.
Okay.
Thanks.
Which brings us to the next one, which is the Picabo Estates Development Agreement. Bob Bevell. That's,
Good
Bob.
afternoon. So I'm here today to present the revised Picabo Estates Development Agreement. This is the same agreement that has already come to you before. The only major change to the development is the phasing portion of it, where the developer wished to break the development into two different phases, allowing him to get portions of it built this year and then possibly next year or later continuing it. So as far as any pitfalls or anything like that, I think we've kind of seen what's already seen what's in there. So do you guys have any questions on that?
Bob, I see that there's the section on street trees. Did that change at all from the last development agreement? Do you know?
I believe there was a change in the street tree. Yes, but only in the fact that they were going to break it into two phases. I think.
Thank you.
Where they needed to pay a portion of it for this phase, and then we'd pay another portion of it for the second phase.
Okay, appreciate that.
Walter.
On street trees, did I hear there was a discussion in the tree commission about some change in that?
I'm unaware. Dwight's here, and Bill can probably address that.
Good afternoon. The Street Tree Commission the Tree Commission has been working on possible amendments to the current program, which is really a voluntary program where developers pay a deposit in, and then the voucher is available for homeowners to receive a tree, but they still have to do the installation of the tree. And with the last review,
The property owner.
the property owner,
Does the installation.
correct. So the developer provides a deposit, and there's a calculation of the number of trees that are required for the lots. It's typically 2 for a standard lot or 4 for a corner lot, and they put a deposit in for $100 per tree that's required. And that provides a voucher that a homeowner could utilize to receive a tree from a community nursery and then to plant the street trees. There have been a review that had been completed about 18 months ago looking at the effectiveness of that program, and I think at that point they were thinking they were getting about 65% utilization. So of the trees that we desired to have planted, only about 65% of them were being installed, either because homeowners weren't aware of it or weren't taking advantage of the program. So there are some potential changes to that program that have been under consideration, and our department pulled together a committee of land developers, retailers, realtors, and contractors to take a look at the issue and come up with some suggestions of changes to that program that will be coming forward to the council here probably in the next couple of months.
So it's premature for this development agreement?
Correct. This subdivision under current consideration would continue underneath the existing program. Any changes would affect any future subdivisions.
Cool. Yes. I know where you're going. Go
I'm
for it.
leaving you that one. I'm going to do another one. Paragraph 6 talks about security for improvements. What is the amount of security and type on this project?
The security for improvements only comes into effect if the developer wishes to start having building permits issued for lots without the improvements being done. Is that there's two different securities that are laid out. There's one for if they want to start building ahead of having the improvements completed, and then there's also a security warranty that
The deposit against building permits prior to completion of infrastructure.
no, that would be
What's the amount?
the amount is
This
figured
is
at the
generic
time.
language here.
All right, the amount would be figured out at the time of trying to enter into the agreement. So we would do an estimate of the improvements, because the improvements would only be required for that lot frontage.
The developer in this instance, I believe, intends to
No.
complete all the improvements prior to requesting building permits, so they probably won't be furnishing security.
Okay, just a minute. I didn't hear you because I was still thinking that
Sure.
one. It's not just the frontage. I mean, if they hadn't got the water line up the street, you can't just do the frontage. You've got to bond against whatever isn't done.
Yes, you're correct. The water, sewer, storm, all of that is also included, but it would be just for the what is in front of the lot that they want to do.
Well,
We've got one more coming on.
Just to clarify, typically the security is required for that phase. So before any building permits would be issued in that phase, the security for that phase would have to be furnished.
whole phase?
And
this is-
the calculation would be made based upon the improvements that have yet to be made, correct?
Plus engineering and administration expenses on top of that underneath the city code. In this instance, the developer intends to
not
complete
believe
the
they plan to
improvements.
do that?
Correct.
Les?
Okay.
Okay. You walked all that way for nothing.
It was just in case.
So
That takes care of my
Okay.
question. Now
one
yours.
more from me is, have we made any progress on the naming of the street?
That was mine, because it's in the plat still.
I hope you got your Fitbit.
I was expecting it to be different in the plat.
We have continued to work on that particular issue. We've approached the folks on Landy Lane about the concept of changing the name. Frankly, met with a similar response as to those on Lanny Lane that we addressed previously. So what we are looking at as probably the best way to proceed would be to, as we reported previously, start the street numbering in the 1400 range, lot numbering in 1400 and at Orchard, and continue up as we head to the east. That's going to be a little higher start than typically we would see in our addressing grid. And then also pursue looking at changing the lane to some other title, whether it's Lanny Drive or Lanny Road or something to that effect. So to get some distinction between Lanny Road and Landy Lane, it would just help a little bit in potential confusion.
Can that be done post-plat? Because this plat has Landy Lane.
In the final plan,
Lanny
it still
Lane.
shows as Lanny Lane,
Yeah.
so we would need to address that before it goes to.
When will that
final
decision be made?
We can do that at any time and get it into the final plat.
Well, I see Scott Becker's here for the developer. Do you have any thoughts on that, Scott? You need to come forward.
Yeah, we can certainly make any changes to the plat on the name. If we want to change it to Lanny Drive right now, we could do that. It'd be very simple for us to take care of. I know the developer has no interest in Lanny, so.
I'm sorry.
The developer has no interest in the name Lanny. It just,
I was told he did.
I thought it
Well,
was
it
no,
was
the
the two
previous
residents.
developer.
It was
And it was the
Black.
two residents who were attached to the Lanny.
I understand
address.
that. Someone in the city staff had told me that the developer was attached to the land.
Of the previous
previous.
development.
Oh, not, and this is not the developer of the
No. that was-
Blackwell or
that was-
Blackwood.
That was
whatever
Don
it's-
Blacketer
Okay, I get
that
it.
developed
Okay.
that one.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to do what you're going to do. I wish we could have caught this earlier on and addressed it. I moved on to Ridgeview Drive in 1990, and for 5 to 10 years, I'd get phone calls from freight trucks telling me they cannot find my house number on Ridge Road. And the opposite of what the fire chief said, there it's on the opposite sides of town. So if you're a block away, you're better than being on the opposite side of town, I guess. But it gets confusing. Not just to fire trucks, but also to delivery people and otherwise. So
Well, I think the changing of the address blocks and retitling Lanny to Road, Drive, Street, something,
can help.
would address the issue adequately.
You mean then he wouldn't have to change the numbering
Well, no,
They'll change
Do both. yeah.
yeah,
They'll
it'd be
number
both
it
of them.
funny
still?
too.
Yeah, there'd be a gap in the numbering relative to the larger city street grid numbers, but I think would provide sufficient differentiation of address.
Yeah, the intent there is that we would not have similar numbering on both streets.
Okay.
So, okay, if we get that done by the time we roll around, that would be good too. So, that goes on with the rest of the Picabo
Yes, sir.
Estates package. Next up is the Stormwater Utility Study Phase 1 Master Services Agreement from Kevin Lilly.
afternoon. Well, as you know, we have, the EPA is proposing to designate the city as a regulated small municipal separate storm sewer system. And under that program, we're going to need to require a large amount of stormwater improvements and regulations and activities that we may or may not already do now, but most importantly, we need to develop a stormwater utility in order to fund those things that are going to be required. So we put out an RFQ back in March, and from that process, we selected Cardno. Let's see, Cardno GS Incorporated from Yakima. There was only one other respondent, that was FCS from Redmond, Washington. Took us quite a bit of back and forth to negotiate an agreement that we could afford with the existing budget. And what we've done is take basically the first 7 of about 13 tasks and roll those into this agreement that you have today. So what this issue is to approve the Master Services Agreement and the Task Order 1 for this work, which you had in your packet, the agreement with the list of tasks. It's in the amount of $119,960. I wanted to point out one item that Walter asked me about earlier today. We're going to include a sentence that is not currently in the task order agreement. It would be that it is in our current task order agreements, but when this agreement was first constructed, since then we've kind of refined that agreement with legal. It was just the sentences that monthly invoices shall be billed for time actually spent on the project. So there's no misunderstanding about whether these tasks are lump sum tasks. You know, we completed this, therefore we get all of this money, rather than showing us hours worked.
Walter.
Thank you. Paragraph 2.1 of the agreement, Kevin, on page 2 of 7.
Yeah.
I appreciate what you're doing, and I think it's part of the answer. I'm a little concerned about 2.1. It says that shall perform the services for a not to exceed total fee as outlined. To me, that's a lump sum contract sentence. It does say in 2.2 that the engineer is going to provide the city with a monthly statement of fees earned and cost. Your sentence may do it. It's just that this is not as clear as it could be, that this is not a lump sum contract. It's a maximum not to exceed, and it's a pay for service time and materials contract. And that's my concerns.
I would have to defer that answer to my attorney.
And then finally on that topic, if I may, I don't see a fee schedule attached.
Oh, you didn't?
It's not. I don't think, I couldn't find it in what we've got, where it shows the principal engineer's rate,
Oh, you mean
et cetera. No, that's
breakdown
that's
of
the
the table.
task. I'm talking about principal engineer, the project engineer,
Yes.
draftsman, or whatever they call them nowadays. Sorry, Bob. Et cetera, et cetera. I'm used to those being attached when you're talking about billing time and materials.
Okay. I have a rate schedule from them, but you're right, I don't have it included here, only the estimated costs.
So I would just leave you with the question as to whether or not the clarity of how they are to bill and how we are to pay them and what the ultimate bill will be is not as clear as I feel it could be.
Good afternoon again.
Hey.
What I would propose is we'll look at this, and if we make some changes, we will call that out at the council meeting to make those changes to meet your
Yeah, I have
Sure,
no,
concerns.
I have no problem with the concept, the
Yep.
task, the job. It's just the technicalities of the way the contract's written.
Yeah, I felt like a lot of that was addressed in task 7, that was the high priority of stating that you have to have the monthly meetings and the just kind of what you were saying when you came up, that there's all this stuff that has to be gone over and checked and rechecked, and it looked like that was being built into the document so that you could take care to make sure monthly all the things that you have to do are being done. It's under task 7. It says all phases, so it's in that chart. Under tasks, descriptions, page 40. It just looks like it's ongoing on 5A.
Under the very bottom of 5A.
Okay. Now I'm getting there.
It just says conduct informational workshops and meetings with city council, council committees, the public, and key stakeholders, including UNI, and support the city's utility adoption hearing. So it just looked to me like there's going to have to be a lot of information made available for everyone to understand this new
There is.
thing that's going to take
There will
place.
be a lot of interaction with the council and a lot of decisions made, a lot of hairs to split, and a lot of options to weigh. So it'll be a complex process.
Yeah.
These folks, by the way, are the individuals who assisted the city of Pullman with their stormwater utility, which I understand went quite well. We're glad to have them.
Rather, they'd assisted the city of Coeur d'Alene, who has yet to be sued over their fee structure.
But extraneous
yet
to the...
to be sued.
Yet to be seen.
Okay, so are we okay with this, with the suggestions, good enough to put it on consent?
No, if there's going to be changes made in the
Wanna see
way,
it?
to go from this to
So regular agenda then, which shouldn't take long.
no, it shouldn't at all. Just give us and the public a chance to take to see that it's not
Final
it's
copy.
not what was in here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. So, good stuff. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
You look excited.
I am actually.
Oh, good.
I'm an engineer. I don't get
Yeah.
excited.
Next up is disbursement report for August of 2016. Gary and Sarah. Hello, Sarah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, looking at the total expenditures for August, our expenditures came in at about $2,224,873. The major expenditures made up about 93% of that. With looking at some of the large expenditures we had 2 payments that went to the Southwest Sewer Trunk Line. That totaled about $257,000. We had 3 payments for the 3rd Street reconstruction, which came to about $122,000.
Which I drove on today.
Yes, me too, for the first time, actually. And then we had a payment to the Moscow School District for the playfields. It was our portion of the maintenance, fence installation, and sprinklers. And then an annual maintenance payment to Acela, which is our customer support for Springbrook, and that was about $38,000. Payroll is always our largest expenditure. That came in at just over $1 million. And I think that pretty much highlights the major ones we had.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Looks good.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we pass around the magic pen and the sheet. And while we're signing, next item up is open budget for the fiscal year 2015-16, FY 2016. Same participants.
Yes, sir. You have in your packet a proposal for open budget. We need an open budget process when our amount of appropriation that's passed in the previous year's budget does not include those things that were unanticipated. So we have 3 things which require an open budget process. Within each particular budget and fund, there is some flexibility that is built in there. However, when we get some things that are set up, we don't have that flexibility. For instance, if you have in the administrative budget, if there's a expense that goes over, say, $5,000, and there's $5,000 less expense in some other line item, that isn't of any consequence. However, we have three different areas where we're proposing to open up the budget. The first is on the general fund. Last year, the council, in FY 2015, the council, in its support of public transit, had granted Smart Transit an appropriation of $145,000, of which $120,000 was for operation and $25,000 was for local match for an FTA grant to purchase a bus. Unfortunately, the timing, it takes a long time to get a bus. You're not going to pay for it until it's accepted, so on and so forth. So essentially, we didn't get billed for that prior to September 30th of 2015. So they'd already ordered the bus, the grant was in process, so at that time the determination was made to essentially carry the funds forward, subject to council approval, which is what we're asking you to do now. So that carries over, and we're asking that you approve that for $25,000. In the Culture and Recreation Fund, we'd anticipated that the Moscow School District community playfields would be completed prior to September 30th of 2015. As you know, it came over past that, so it had been previously budgeted, but again, bills kept coming in. The project was extended somewhat, so that prior appropriation was again, for our purposes, budgetary purposes, was carried over. For appropriation purposes, we need to rectify the Hamilton Fund, and that is to provide authority for that expense.
So the 80,000 is not new money or additional money. It's originally planned money.
Exactly.
That got caught in a
Temporal.
fiscal year change.
Exactly. Okay. When we went into 2016, you appropriated a certain amount for the revenues, a certain amount for the expenses, and this expense was not anticipated because we thought it was going to be done prior to September 30th of 15. Similar, the same thing with information systems. We obtained a FEMA grant for the thermal imaging cameras, which we had not anticipated in the FY16 budget. So we need to find something to do with that so we could both receive it and expend it, and it's fully explained in Sarah's memo that's completed. Also in that, we will be asking the council to authorize us to move forward with an open budget ordinance. We have a public hearing which is set for the 19th where the public will be able to comment on these three matters, and then we'll ask the council to approve the amended ordinance.
Not related to this, but related to budgets and audits and so forth. And I don't remember the numbers, but I believe, and y'all may have heard this also, that they have raised the amount of federal funds that push you into a single audit.
Yes.
750,000
Yeah, so I don't know, we may be above that all the
Yeah.
time anyway.
this year.
I think one year we actually didn't have to, even at 500, but
Yeah, we've had a couple of years where we haven't had to do that, but the ITC and, of course, the well number 10 and the booster stations will push us over the top.
Yep.
So it sounds like temporal bookkeeping, which is fine by us, but from what you just said, it sounds like this goes to regular agenda too.
Yes, since it involves a public hearing and an ordinance, we anticipated it would be on, actually, we're required by code to have it on regular agenda.
can't take it off if you wanted to.
Man, we have loaded up council, and administration took it easy on us.
Zip right through it.
Okay. Anybody have anything else to discuss?
Nothing further from staff.
And nothing from up here, so we will consider ourselves adjourned.